So House Hightower has historically been one of the most powerful houses, if not the most powerful and influential house in all of Westeros. I've talked about them in many of my videos, so please go check those out, especially this one. But to put it as simply as possible, House Hightower is one of the most ancient houses in all of Westeros, and has historically been the most influential in terms of soft power at least. Because even though they don't really get involved with politics in a direct way, no one doubts their importance and cultural and religious influence. So in this video I want to explore what exactly happened to House Hightower after the Dance of Dragons, considering the fact that they played such a big part in the Targaryen civil war, and how come they didn't really suffer any direct consequences for their actions? More on this later though. Even though House Hightower has historically been one of the most powerful houses in Westeros, if not the most powerful, they have been reluctant to directly involve themselves in conflicts. One of the exceptions to this of course was the Dance of Dragons, a Targaryen civil war that saw the Hightowers as secondary protagonists, and in which they took part in full-heartedly. So let's start by seeing what happened to the Hightowers that took part in this war. So in the book, Otto Hightower is killed when Rhaenyra and Daemon capture King's Landing. His son, Gwaine Hightower, the guy that Daemon challenged in episode 1, is killed by some Goldcloaks during the capture. As for his brother Hobart Hightower, he poisons himself to try and kill some other guy at the same time. For a good reason actually, but still. And Alicent Hightower is imprisoned after watching all of her children die, goes mad, starts talking to herself, comes to despise the color green, which is so ironic in so many ways, and eventually dies because of the winter fever that was spreading and killing people through all of Westeros at the time. So yeah, these guys did not get a very happy ending, to say the least. Now, you could argue that they got exactly what they deserved. After all, it seems like their crimes finally caught up to them, but still, what about the future of House Hightower? What about the future Hightower generations? Well, here's where Lyonel Hightower enters the story. Note, in the book, he is the son of Ormond Hightower, but in the show, they might change this because, they decided to make Hobart the Lord of House Hightower instead of Ormond. Anyway, in the book, he's actually a pretty interesting character. Lyonel became the Lord of House Hightower at the age of 15, after his father Ormond was killed at the First Battle of Tumbletown in mid-130 AC. According to the book, when Lord Corlys Velaryon's peace terms were first offered to him, he ripped them to shreds. Apparently he wanted to continue the war, but his stepmother Samantha had Lyonel agree to the terms by promising to marry him if he surrendered. Yeah, Lyonel had the brilliant idea of making his stepmother his new paramour, and definitely something that brought shame to his family and got him into trouble with the High Sept at the time. But still, he was pretty stubborn, and he knew that the future High Septon would be more forgiving of this sort of stuff, especially because, as Lord of Oldtown, he could make sure of that. Overall, the Dance of Dragons was one of the most destructive wars in the history of Westeros, as it took the life of so many men and so many dragons. In the end, it is important to remember that everyone lost. However, House Targaryen was the real loser of this war. Before the Dance of Dragons, House Targaryen was basically a house of demigods. Dragons were an extremely powerful weapon and gave the Targaryens an incredible military advantage over other houses. House Hightower also suffered because of their participation in the civil war. They lost a lot of men, gold, and their relationship with some of the other houses of the realm were temporarily damaged because of it. But they did get to keep most of their political soft power in Oldtown, with their control over the fate of the Seven and the Maesters who write the history books in the first place. So yeah, overall House Hightower was still stable after the war, even though they were no longer as powerful as they were before obviously. And the Tyrells, who made the wise decision to stay neutral during the war, are now truly the real rulers of the Reach. So, in the book, there is a bit of reconciliation between the Greens and the Blacks, at least a little bit. When Alan Velaryon visited Oldtown with his fleet while he was on his way to help the Lannisters fight the Ironborn, not only did Lord Lyonel Hightower welcome him, but he also provided the Oakenfist with more men, ships and supplies for his journey and future battles with the Ironborn. Which did not happen, but it's the thought that counts. It shows us that these new generations whose fathers and cousins fought in the war don't have to hate each other or fight each other anymore. At least, that's how the book presents it. Let's not forget that most things in Fire and Blood should be taken with a grain of salt. Things are rarely as simple as they seem in the world of Westeros. The real politics happen behind closed doors. Anyway, by far the weirdest part for me is the marriage between Rhaena Targaryen, the daughter of Daemon Targaryen and Lyanna Velaryon, and Garmund Hightower, the brother of Lord Lyonel Hightower. So in the book, Rhaena Targaryen, the daughter of Daemon, was at that point the only dragon rider in the entire world. Ironic, considering that she was the only one without a dragon during the dance. Remember how she was in a similar position to Aemon in episodes 6 and 7? Yet, in the end, she would go down in history as the last Targaryen dragon rider. She rode the Dragon Morning, a pink dragon with black horns that hatched during the Dance of Dragons. The dragon was relatively healthy, and it was going at a pretty fast pace as well. The only other dragons around at the time were wild dragons like the Cannibal, or Sheaf Stealer who flew away, and Silverwing who made her lair somewhere in the Reach. But nobody was able to claim them, and we don't know what exactly happened to them. So yeah, Rhaena Targaryen was in a very privileged position as a temporary princess of Dragonstone and the only dragon rider left. Not only was she the only dragon riding Targaryen at the time, but she was also named Princess of Dragonstone and heir to the Iron Throne in case something were to happen to her younger brother Aegon. So if something had happened to young Aegon, the man who married Rhaena would have become the next king. But this was before she married Garmund Hightower actually. You see, at first Rhaena married a man named Corwin Corbray. In the book she later suffered a miscarriage and her husband unfortunately died during a military campaign in the Vale, which left Rhaena a widow, and therefore she was able to remarry later with Garmund. But the thing is, we don't know how Rhaena and Garmund even met, or why they married. Was it just a political match, or did they actually love each other? Did Garmund seduce her, or was she attracted to him in the first place? Like, what exactly happened? I don't know, I mean, you'd think that after the Dance of Dragons, people would find it suspicious that the Hightowers were able to marry into the royal family again. Especially the last dragon-riding Targaryen left, you know? The most suspicious thing, however, is that Morning died sometime between 136 and 153 AC, which is weird. At most, the dragon lived for only 20 years after the Dance of Dragons had come to an end. Morning was a young dragon, and a healthy one at that, considering the fact that Rhaena was able to ride him a couple of times above King's Landing, and even considered accompanying her brother Aegon with Morning on a tour throughout Westeros. So yeah, this young dragon should have lived for another 150 years at the very least. There is no way he died of natural causes. Right? Did the Hightowers conspire to marry the last dragon-riding Targaryen and then kill her dragon? I mean, we don't get a whole lot of information about their relationship in the book. So I guess we'll have to wait and see if the second volume of Fire and Blood will give us more information about this. We know that Rhaena and Garmund had like 6 daughters together, and yeah, that's pretty much it. At best, their marriage represents a moment of reconciliation between House Hightower and House Targaryen, and at worst, a conspiracy theory to control and later kill the last dragon-riding Targaryen in the world. And at worst, a conspiracy theory to control and later kill the last living dragon of House Targaryen. However, considering the fact that the history books are written by maesters, it is highly unlikely that we will get to learn the truth about the Hightower conspiracy. Well, if there is one in the first place. I personally am not a fan of the Maester and Hightower conspiracy theory, but I would admit that these circumstances are very suspicious. Fully grown dragon Silverwing also died sometime during this time period, so that's also kinda weird. Now, you're probably wondering how come the Hightowers didn't face any long-term consequences for their participation in the war. I mean, why didn't Cregan Stark just march south to Oldtown to make the traitors face justice like he said he was going to do? Well, the answer is really a simple one. Geography. Oldtown is in a very privileged geographic position, as it sits right at the edge of the continent, far away from both Dorne and the political center of Westeros. So, to put it simply, the march from King's Landing to Oldtown itself would have taken way too much time for medieval armies, and it just isn't worth it, you know? Especially because Oldtown is a well-defended city, so unless you have dragons, capturing it would be a costly endeavor. The only thing Oldtown really has to fear is the Ironborn and their raids. So yeah, continuing the war just for the sake of revenge or retaliation or something stupid like that just wasn't worth it. Especially after so many people had already suffered and lost so much as a result of the war. But hey, what do you think? Do you think that the Hightowers poisoned Morning and the other surviving dragons? Do you think that they deserve to suffer greater consequences after the Dance of Dragons? I mean, all the Hightowers that took part in the war died, so not like the new generation deserves to suffer for the sins of their parents, you know? Anyway, thank you so much for watching everyone. Please consider sharing and subscribing because it really means a lot for this channel. And I know I said it was going to be a long while before I uploaded again, but my schedule has just been very inconsistent these past few weeks, you know? So yeah, don't expect my uploads to be, consistent. I want to let you guys know that I do plan to keep making more of these videos in the future. I've just been very busy. Thank you for watching as always, and goodbye.